Archaeology News, the news you can trust.
Today we're going to discuss something a lot of archaeologists don't seem to like to talk about, it seems.
Show me the money! Show me the money! Yeah! Louder! Show me the money!
That's right, and coins more specifically. Maybe that's because coins are often found by detectorists and associated with metal detecting, which is definitely not archaeology, and relationships between them and archaeologists are often a little frosty. And another thing no one's ever told me, but which I've long suspected. For some folks, coins are kind of like cheating. Archaeologists, we're like detectives. We go to this site and we're trying to figure out what it's all about. Coins, on the other hand, are so straightforward. They often tell you the exact time and place they were made, and a lot about who was there and when. And this limits our imagination in telling the story.
Oh, a bullshit artist.
But there have been so many awesome stories about coins in the last few weeks that I thought I might as well get it out of my system and cover them here. First up, a first look at coins from what is supposed to be the most valuable shipwreck ever found, the San Jose off of the coast of Colombia, with a messy fight over ownership rights ensuing. We discussed this in the very first episode of Archaeology News, and though the legal fight is ongoing, the government of Colombia seems to be in the driver's seat for the time being. The ship's exact location is of course a secret, but it's somewhere off the coast of Cartagena, where it was sunk by a British squadron in 1708. Salvage operations have yet to take place, but images of the wreck have already been released in the last few years, and we know the ship was laden with all kinds of treasures. But just in the last couple of weeks, a study that analyzed images of the coins from the wreck offers convincing evidence that the ship is in fact the San Jose. Now, the coins were found in 3 areas of the wreck, and marine archaeologists took lots and lots of photos. The close-up ones of the coins were called photogrammetry, which allowed them to create 3D models of those coins. They also used a methodology called orthophotomosaics, taking a series of photos which are then corrected to remove the distortions, allowing for the creation of a 3D model of the site and the entire surrounding seabed. And it's what the coins showed that was quite revealing. As colonial coins were of the times, these were hand-struck coins, called cobs in English or macuquinas in Spanish, so they were irregularly shaped. But those photogrammetric models showed it all. On the obverse side, we have a Jerusalem cross and the quartered shield of castles and lions, symbols of Castile and Leon, the 2 kingdoms which formed a united Spain. On the reverse side, the crowned pillars of Hercules above sea waves signified that the coin was struck in the Lima Mint. L signified Lima Mint, 8 was the coin's denomination of 8 escudos, and H referred to the chief assayer Francisco de Hurtado. The assayer is the guy who certifies the coin's weight, purity of the metals, etc. against the standards. The small pellet near 8 is a distinctive mark of Hurtado's cobs. The PVA is short for the plus ultra motto, meaning further beyond, kinda like the US money with its E pluribus unum motto. And that 707 is the minting year, 1707, which is critical because the San Jose sank in 1708. And given that the San Jose was part of a fleet known as the Flota de Tierra Firma, whose job it was to bring loot from South America back to Spain, this is all adding up pretty nicely. So all of this evidence seems to remove reasonable doubt about the shipwreck's identity, especially as the general location matches historical accounts. So let's stay tuned for more information about the finds as they come out, and see if they strike that $17 billion or whatever it is jackpot. Okay, I'm really excited about this next story because it deals with my area of research. So recently a detectorist found an extremely significant Anglo-Saxon coin in a field near Norwich, England. Why is this important? Well, because that coin dates all the way back to the 6th century, when this area was part of what was known as the Kingdom of East Anglia, one of the 7 kingdoms of the Anglo-Saxon Heptarchy, and this would make it the oldest coin ever found from that kingdom. However, that's just scratching the surface. East Anglia began its history as a powerful kingdom under the king Redwald, who was known as Bretwalda, or sort of the dominant king of the Heptarchy. However, after that it fell into obscurity, eventually being conquered by the Vikings. Now, where have we heard that name before? Do you remember? That's right, Sutton Hoo. It's believed that the person buried in the ship burial is none other than King Redwald, the only person in that area recorded in history who could have commanded such wealth. We covered this some time back when we did our episode on that iconic helmet. Now, not only was this coin found not that far from Sutton Hoo, about 50 miles, but as the coin has been dated from 640 to 660 AD, that would have been just after Redwald's time. He died in 624. But actually looking at this coin, we get some really interesting clues. Now this guy with the funky hairdo is dancing some kind of jig and holding up a cross. This would have been about 50 years after Christianity was reintroduced to Britain in 597, and the religion was spreading fast. However, just beneath that is a pagan symbol called a Valknut, which represents the Norse god Odin, who was known as Woden to the Anglo-Saxons. And on the other side, we see what could be a cross or a swastika, which was a pagan symbol for good luck and fortune long before the angry little man with the funny mustache, let's say, repurposed it. But isn't this weird? Pagan and Christian symbols on the same coin? Well, not exactly. You see, the Venerable Bede, who wrote the only real surviving history of the early Anglo-Saxon times and was a bit of a pious scold, wrote disapprovingly of King Redwald maintaining Christian and pagan altars in the same temple, where he would have had both a cross and performed sacrificial rituals to gods like Woden. Essentially, Bede was throwing shade on Redwald as serving 2 sets of gods. And by the way, archaeologists think they found Redwald's villa at Rendlesham, including perhaps the very shrine described by Bede. One of my professors took part in those excavations. So this coin would have been struck a few decades after this episode Bede wrote about, and Christianity would have been more firmly entrenched by then, though paganism as an official practice lasted until the next century in some parts of England. Perhaps this is why the cross is above the Valknut, because Christianity was gaining ascendancy in the kingdom. One other feature that also struck me. Notice that writing around the edges, it's actually nonsense. It has no meaning, but it's supposed to resemble Latin. Essentially, the minter was illiterate, as was just about everyone else but a few monks at this time, but they were trying to look fancy, because fancy coins had Latin, like those across the English Channel in Francia, and they were all the rage, the true status symbols of their day. And we see this about 150 years later in England, when King Offa of Mercia, another kingdom of the Heptarchy, was trying to keep up with the Joneses. So he had an extremely odd coin struck that is one of my favorite artifacts from any time or place. In those days, the Arab dinar was the prestige coin, putting to rest the idea that globalization is a modern phenomenon. So to show his worldliness, Offa had his own dinar struck, complete with bad Arabic writing. Now that Arabic writing is bad, but it's not exactly nonsense like the scribbles on our 7th century coin, but it essentially says, "There is no God but Allah alone." Pretty odd inscription considering that by this time, Anglo-Saxon England was zealously Christian and would not tolerate other religions in its midst. But then again, though literacy had expanded since the Sutton Hoo times, it was pretty limited to the clergy alone. Kings wouldn't even have been able to read yet. That didn't really take off till almost 100 years later under the reign of Alfred the Great. Anyway, sorry I took that a little off the rails beyond just this East Anglian coin that was just found, but you can tell I love this stuff, right? Now we head to Tabe, Sweden, just outside of Stockholm, where archaeologists found a literal pot of not gold but silver on a site which dated from 500 to 1050 AD, which is known in Scandinavia as the Iron Age, not the early medieval times as it would be in much of the rest of Europe. As you can see from the headline, they found lots of silver stuff in the pot, including an amulet, bracelets, rings, pearls, etc. But what struck me was this necklace made of coins. Now, the site was very well preserved, with the silver objects coming nicely out of the pot, even to the point where remnants of the silk purse survived. Unbelievable after being buried in the dirt for 1,000 years. The coins themselves dated from 904 to 997, and honestly, compared to all that other silver bling you just saw, they're not that much to look at. But the crazy thing? Those coins were struck in places as far-flung as Persia, Bavaria, Bohemia, Normandy, and England, once again putting to rest the idea that globalization is a modern phenomenon. In fact, as we know, the Vikings themselves were a diverse people. After all, Viking is kind of a misnomer. The way they said it back then was to go a Viking, meaning to go on a sea voyage or expedition. It was something you did, not something you were. And they traveled far and wide, making it all the way to places like Constantinople, if you remember when we discussed the King of Norway, Harald Hardrada. And they collected stuff as random as Buddhas from India. And you know what else they collected far and wide? People. Some of whom joined their crews as slaves, others willingly. Now hold your horses before you get annoyed about me trying to de-Scandinavianize the Vikings. I promise you there were no black women Viking chieftains. That's not what this is about. But the Vikings were not in fact a race. And although there's no reason to believe that most of them didn't hail from Scandinavia, recent genetic studies have shown a diversity of European genomes among the Vikings, indicating origins in places like Russia, Ukraine, Ireland, Britain, and Italy. So this was an awesome discovery, and it's really cool to find old coins from so many different places. But this was the Vikings, after all. Should we really be that surprised? Okay, so those are our coin stories for today. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I hope you are coming away from this video enriched. Hey, if you like what you heard, give me that thumbs up below, hit that bell to subscribe, or if you want to support more independent archaeology content, consider contributing to my Patreon, where you can enjoy some exclusive members-only benefits and other goodies. Until the next dig.